On her back are scars of more than 50 cuts given by her master. The occasion was that one morning she was half an hour behind time in bringing up his 5 o'clock cup of coffee. This is part of the short biography of Mary Johnson, one of the 3 former slaves pictured here. She's the one standing in the middle. The photo shoot came about when, in December 1863, Colonel George Hanks accompanied 8 people who had recently been emancipated from slavery in Louisiana on a trip up north. They went to New York and Philadelphia to have these pictures taken as part of a campaign to raise money to educate Louisiana's former slaves. This group photo was published in Harper's Weekly magazine on January 30th, 1864, and included a short biography for each of them. The biographies detailed the dehumanizing experiences that they all faced, from being separated and sold away from their mothers and siblings, to one of them being branded on the forehead with the initials of his former owner. The images were made with 3 goals in mind: to bring awareness to the plight of the millions of people being freed from slavery at the time, raise funds to open schools to provide education and vocational training for them, and to serve as a reminder to the viewer that the people in these images shared the same humanity as anyone else and should not be seen as inferior to the rest of American society. Here's another interesting piece of information. All of the people in this group photo were considered Black under an ideology called the one-drop rule, which mandated that if a person had any African heritage, their racial identity was classified as Black. To believe in the one-drop rule is to believe that racial supremacy is legitimate, and that people should be considered more or less valuable as human beings based on their skin color, ethnic background, and phenotype. But many people don't realize this. So today, we're going to talk about the history of the one-drop rule. The one-drop rule was originally a construct of racial classification that was prominent in the United States. It asserted that any person of African ancestry was considered Black. This ideology is an example of a rule of hypodescent. Hypodescent is the belief that one can automatically assign children with mixed heritage to the group that a society deems to be most inferior. It was meant to uphold a racial caste system that placed European people, particularly those of Anglo-Saxon heritage, at the top, African people at the bottom, and all other races in the middle in descending order from lightest to darkest. At the time, scientific and philosophical doctrine pushed the idea that Europeans were superior to all other races, and therefore had authority to rule over and dominate all other races. This resulted in a belief called white supremacy, which is a school of thought that upholds these ideas. The ideology was first used to support chattel slavery, and later, segregation. The one-drop rule became codified into the laws of some states in the early 20th century following the Civil War and the abolition of slavery. Racial segregation policies called Jim Crow laws were soon put in place to maintain the racial caste system. In regard to those who had both African and European heritage, the one-drop rule of the Jim Crow era maintained that the person would only be considered white if they had less than 1/8 African ancestry. In the state of Virginia, however, the person had to have less than 1/4 African ancestry. In addition to ranking people by race, the one-drop rule was also used to prevent interracial marriages, as well as deny equal rights and opportunities to those who sat lower in the racial caste system. The rule was outlawed by the Supreme Court in 1967, following the case of Loving versus Virginia. Though the law has been overturned, there are still people in the United States of America who believe in and apply the concepts of a racial caste system and hypodescent to how they see others, and struggle to let go of these ideas. Some believe in the one-drop rule to separate themselves from people they dislike and feel superior to. Others do it to create a sense of community in environments where they feel rejected. But the reality is, racial hierarchy is, in and of itself, a made-up concept. It is an ideology based in pseudoscience. All cultures have had a history of being prejudiced. However, most cultures in the Americas don't classify race in such an intensely strict way and consider the one-drop rule to be odd. Most cultures worldwide see race as a more fluid experience that can't be pinned down with a one-drop rule of any kind. To believe that the one-drop rule is acceptable is to hold the opinion that society should be organized into racial caste systems that upholds the concept of an ideal or superior race, and that the further a person is from said ideal or superior race, the more inferior they should be perceived to be by others. When I think about Mary Johnson and the pain that she and the rest of the people in this picture endured, I get upset. I'm upset that they had to grow up in a world that told them that they were inferior to others on account of their heritage. It's upsetting because what they were told was wrong. There was nothing about their ethnic background that made them less than anyone else. Hypodescent isn't real because there is no such thing as racial superiority. No racial group is more worthy than another. People are just people. I think that applying the one-drop rule is an archaic practice that needs to stop. All of these made-up ideas of racial supremacy and hypodescent were invented to divide us and condition us to forget that we are all human, first and foremost. These concepts and ideologies that were invented to divide and control the masses will only have power over us for as long as we choose to believe in them. When we choose to reject these ideas, they will cease to have any influence over how we see the world. I am very grateful to live in a time that allows us to think critically about these ideologies of the past and assess whether or not we want to carry them into the future or replace them with something more appropriate. So, what do you think of the one-drop rule? Do you believe that it can ever be revised and used in a positive way? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.